Our third speaker is Professor Alan Knight, who's the founder of Single Planet Living. But Alan's been in corporate sustainability for over 20 years. He's advised a number of clients ranging from Coca-Cola, Prudential, and Virgin, where he runs the Earth Challenge, a $25 million prize for carbon sequestration. But perhaps the thing he's most famous for was that he was the chair of Green Mondays prior to me, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome him back to the stage here. Alan.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really good to be back. I miss chairing these sessions quite a lot. I think I really come, not with that sort of CV, but the fact that I spent 15 years being a full-time sustainability bod. I never rose to the dizzy heights of Chief Sustainability Officer with a seat on the board. I rose to the height one below that, which was advising a board member who had sustainability in their portfolio. And my sort of message to this sort of conference is, let's avoid making this question bipolar, that there's clearly a wrong answer and there's clearly a right answer. And I'm sort of more thinking that whatever structure works for a company which helps them answer the questions about how do they make their business more sustainable works for them. So I'm just really sort of going to quickly run through some of my observations. It was sort of 1990 when I joined B&Q as a fresh, naive, commercially unaware graduate, where the exam question I was being asked to answer was, what the hell do we do with all this tropical timber in our store? Because the journalists are asking us really difficult questions. And I was asked to do that because I had an environmental degree. I did have a little bit of experience in retail, and I reported direct into the marketing director who had felt the heat because he was the one trying to answer these really difficult questions about where does your tropical timber come from. And he wanted a full-time person to help him because, one, he said, this is really complicated and I don't want to distract a buyer from buying from doing it. Two, I don't really want anybody compromised by their day job. If the timber buyer's doing it, obviously there's a natural conflict with these long-term eco issues and his day-to-day buying. But also I need a focus point, and ultimately when we're ready, I need somebody to answer the questions because I don't want to answer them anymore. I need somebody else who's better informed to answer the questions. And for him, that was enough to invest in a full-time person reporting to him. And I think for B&Q in those 10 years, it was the right model for them at that time. Because I was the sort of young, presumably quite low cost because I was just a graduate, but thinking about eco, thinking about rainforest, thinking about peat and the chemistry of paint. And my boss was a board member who was working out, now how do I reshape Alan's presentation? What is Alan saying which could really work and what doesn't work? So he was doing the commercial bit and I was just doing the techie thinking in the back room to get it right, as well as being the spokesperson and the focus point. But during all of that time, he or I never did the buyer's job. Buyers bought, store managers managed stores, and PR managers did PR. What we did was help them get all those functions aligned to what sustainability meant, or environment, as we CSR as we called it then. So it worked for us, and and the B&Q reputation goes on. So it sort of worked. So if it ain't broke, don't mend it, and don't force an intellectual model on a business if they've sort of worked out what's right for themselves. But what I did all of that time, if you said, Alan, what did you really do? I think I was an advisor. I advised specialist buyers, specialist business managers to embed that sustainable development bit in their thinking. And I stand by that. And then I spent 3 years at Kingfisher, 3 years at SAB Miller, a very large beer company. And in that model, my reporting structure was pretty much the same. I reported in as a specialist to a corporate affairs director who sat on the board, and we worked together. I gave them all the techie stuff. The board member helped me just refine. I was getting more experience at this stage, so I needed less sort of slapping around to sort of refine my thinking to be really elegant for the way that particular board and that particular culture worked. But I was the one who had to do the really complicated thinking, working with all the different functions across the business to come up with something which was true to what I felt was sustainability and would work within that business. My job was to advise the business to move forward. And for the last 5 years, that's what I've done as an independent. I've made a living from being that sort of specialist guru. So I've got some clients who quite like to have that thinking, but because of their size or the way they work, they quite like to outsource that. Again, that model wouldn't work for a lot of people, but it works enough for me to make a living from doing it. So again, let's not tie ourselves into one particular model. As long as a business is thinking about sustainability, let them have the model which really works, and don't judge them if their model is slightly different to your model. One thing I have observed from my helicopter view is the profession of full-time sustainability managers, be them with the C or not, is still not really quite well defined. So I, with Bob Lathan, who's in this room, and 20 other people, have written what we think as full-timers, what that role is and what the skill sets is. And we put that under the banner of something called the Global Association of Corporate Sustainability Officers, or GACSCO for short. So some of us are beginning to think, what does this role mean? And the thing which emerges from that is we have the same old leadership skills, the things you see in every competency, but what made our job description and skill sets slightly different was knowledge about sustainable development, and a curiosity for tomorrow's knowledge on sustainable development, and a degree of independence from every day-to-day function. And I think that's a really important role, and I have succeeded in my roles because of that sort of independent role. I too completely share the ambition of our role not existing, but I don't think it's as straightforward as to wish our extinction, because at the moment, nobody, including Friends of the Earth, Greenpeace, public policy makers, the best chief sustainability officer in the world, doesn't actually quite know how we're going to create sort of the middle class, well-being, low-carbon lifestyle for 9 billion people by 2050. We don't actually have the answers yet. And I think what each company needs is somebody who goes to those meetings with environmental groups and other countries and other companies to actually collaborate and actually work out what is that particular sector's contribution towards that ultimate exam question, which is 9 billion sustainable lives by 2050. And before we can render a full-time focus on that issue at any level in the business to extinction, we first need the answers of that question. And I think our profession's greatest contribution will be getting our head around the stuff we currently don't know. And until we do that, let's stop worrying about what title we have and where we fit into the structure, and stick with, if it works for your organisation, do it. Thank you.